minute or two. So thank you for coming today, and thank you for your patience.
All right. Well, good afternoon, early evening to some of you, and welcome to today's presentation on stakeholder participation and regional Haze planning. Just to confirm, yeah, looks like it's sharing in the presentation mode. My name is Mark Jones. I will be helping with facilitation along with Michael Baca. We both work for the New Mexico Environment Department, Air Quality Bureau, and the Control Strategy section. And before we get started, I'm going to review a few housekeeping items. Audio is available for this presentation through your computer or by telephone. Please keep your microphone muted to avoid background noise and feedback. If you have questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat box, and we'll try to have a dedicated time to answer some of the questions at the end of key segments in the presentation. If you're having any technical difficulties, please contact us through the chat box, and we'll try to have some people. We have some people on that can try to troubleshoot the issue or issues. Closed captioning is available on the bottom left of your screen, and we will post this presentation and slide deck on our website after the meeting. I'll now turn it over to Michael Baca, our Control Strategies Manager, for an overview of the agenda today.
Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome everybody to our stakeholder engagement event. Today we are going to start by familiarizing everyone with the Air Quality Bureau, our mission, and some of the staff that work to develop and adopt air quality rules and plans for the state. So after we do some introductions, we will begin discussing our general rulemaking process here at NMED, and then we'll also try to highlight how the regional Haze adoption process may differ due to some of the additional requirements that are contained within the federal rule and also within the Clean Air Act. After that, we're going to switch gears a little bit from public participation process for rulemaking, and we're going to start focusing in on some of the information that we have been analyzing and evaluating as we develop our state implementation plan for regional Haze for the second implementation period. So we will have a brief overview of the information that was presented at our last stakeholder engagement event, and then we'll move on to discuss some of the information that we are looking at in step 2 of the EPA's framework, which is in regards to New Mexico's impact on Class 1 areas and surrounding states. Okay, so the Air Quality Bureau's mission is to protect the inhabitants and natural beauty of New Mexico by preventing the deterioration of air quality. And so here you can see we have some pictures up of some of the beautiful Class 1 areas that we have, and we have pictures of New Mexicans enjoying, it looks like the state fair and out at one of our lakes and recreating. And in our beautiful state, the land of enchantment, we have so many opportunities to recreate and enjoy the natural beauty of our state. And regional Haze and some of the programs that we run is how we try to keep those places enchanted and keep them clean and healthy when we do get out and try to enjoy our time there. So before we introduce ourselves, I want to explain a little bit about how the Air Quality Bureau accomplishes its mission and how we go about that. So the Air Quality Bureau issues permits, we conduct inspections, and we also do enforcement activities. We also monitor ambient air, and we have different sections within the Air Quality Bureau that are tasked with taking care of each of those different activities. So we have a permitting section that does the permitting for us. We have a compliance and enforcement section. We have an operations section that does the monitoring for us. And then we are housed within the planning section of the Air Quality Bureau. And we are within the control strategies group. And my group is generally responsible for tracking air quality trends that we compare to the federal standards. And when necessary, we develop the rules and plans to improve air quality or administer our programs. Next slide. So the planning section, within the planning section, I'd like to introduce some of the people that are here with us today. First, I want to start off with my boss, and then maybe we can move on to the control strategy staff. So if my boss wants to get on and introduce herself, that'd be great.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kirby Olson. I have been in the planning section chief since about the beginning of 2023. So some of you, I recognize some of the participant names. Some of you probably remember me from my previous position with the Air Quality Bureau, where for several years I was the manager of the major source permitting section. And now I've moved over to planning, where I oversee both my BACA's control strategy group and our air dispersion modeling group, which includes Angela Rasso, who's here with us tonight, and our small business assistance program. So I'm looking forward to getting to work more with all of you on this regional Haze project. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Kirby. I think then we can, how about we jump to Angela, since she is in the modeling and emission inventory group. Let's let Angela introduce herself, and then we can move on to control strategies.
Hi, my name is Angela Rasso. I'm a dispersion modeler with the Air Quality Bureau Planning Section's Emissions Inventory and Modeling Group. I'm here tonight because I'm providing some technical assistance with the Control Strategies Regional Haze program. I've been a dispersion modeler here at NMED for almost 5 years now.
Great, thanks, Angela. Then we can move on to Mark.
Sure. Mark Jones. I work in the control strategy section with Michael Baca, and I'm in the Northwest New Mexico part of the state in Farmington, in the Farmington field office. So I've been up here for about 17 years now, working on a variety of projects over the years, with regional haze being my current focus. I'm the regional haze technical lead for our New Mexico team.
Thanks, Mark. Let's go ahead and move on down south. Armando Paz.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, I'm out here in the Las Cruces field office with the control strategies section. And so I work with the dust mitigation plan for Luna and Doñana counties. I also work with some ozone issues down here in the Tucson Park non-team area. And also submit EPA demonstrations for exceptional events due to our high wind blowing dust events. It's good to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Armando. It is quite plenty dusty and windy up here up north today. I'm sure you guys are getting enjoying some of that wind as well. So Neil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Mike. My name is Neil Butt. I'm the Control Strategies Unit. I'm the project manager for BLB settlement funding, the project manager for diesel emissions reduction act grant funding, and I'm providing technical support for regional Haze.
Thanks, Neil. And as I mentioned before, my name is Michael Baca. I'm the manager of the Control Strategies Group. I've been with NMED for about 18 years, 15 of which have been with the Air Quality Bureau. And, you know, I enjoy my family, hunting, fishing, and professional sports. So for all my baseball fans out there, happy opening day and the start of the Major League Baseball season today. So now I will move it over to Mr. Neil Butt to give us some information on public participation.
Thanks, Mike. For our stakeholder engagement events, the Control Strategies Group trying to improve our relationships with our stakeholders, to build their knowledge base, and better equip them to participate in the process. We want to cover the traditional outreach and education material for stakeholder engagement, but we really are striving for improved communication. And not only on how we communicate with our stakeholders, but how our stakeholders communicate with us. Your input is crucial to the development of all the work that we do and allows for a uniquely New Mexican solution to the challenges facing us. A local approach is much preferable to the federal government developing plans and regulations in Dallas or DC for our state. So we're looking to build a continuous dialogue that goes beyond individual projects and pollutants. With that said, we have a lot to cover, and I want to be mindful of our time, so we may have some open discussion at the end. I'd like to first go over the general process for rulemaking and SIP adoption, pointing out where the regional Haze SIP adoption process differs from standard rulemaking. Then I'll discuss opportunities for the public to learn more about New Mexico's regional Haze SIP and how to become involved in the development of the regional Haze SIP, including webinars like this one, as well as future ones. We held one on February 28th. We're holding this one today on March 30th. And we plan on holding a third one on April 27th, as well as more to come in the future. We're engaging in public participation beyond the minimum legal requirements. When the need for a rule change or SIP revision has been identified, a project lead is assigned, and an internal work group is formed to develop a proposal. This might involve research on the history of the rule we are amending, or if it's a new rule, what other jurisdictions have done to solve a similar problem. It could involve collecting information on the affected industry, what the impacts might be if an existing rule is amended or a new rule is adopted. The proposed rule will also be evaluated to ensure that the change is legal and authorized. Depending on the subject matter of the rule, experts from other sections within the Bureau will be involved in the development. Sometimes we conduct initial public outreach before we've even drafted the rule change, so that we can gather input beforehand. Next, we develop a draft rule revision, or SIP revision. Since regional Haze is such a complex problem and affects multiple states, we're collaborating with the Western Regional Air Partnership. They're providing invaluable technical assistance to help analyze and assess the impacts of regional Haze, as well as possible solutions. Then, usually after the proposed rule or SIP change has been vetted by management and an NMED attorney has reviewed the rule, then we conduct stakeholder outreach. We will release a stakeholder review draft and solicit comment from those industries and individuals that are most likely to be affected by our proposal. And if need be, hold open houses or one-on-one meetings to improve the draft rule or SIP. The specific requirement of the regional Haze SIP is that we consult with federal land managers and afford them a 60-day review period. Another unusual aspect of the regional Haze rule SIP is that we consult with neighboring states. We then make necessary and appropriate revisions to the draft rule or SIP based on the input received from our stakeholders. Next, we discuss our draft rule or SIP with the EPA and solicit their comments. If the draft rule is part of the SIP, EPA may require that we conduct a 110L demonstration to show that the proposed changes to a rule will not weaken any protection of air quality afforded by the SIP, sometimes referred to colloquially as relaxing the SIP. 110L refers to Section 110L of the Clean Air Act. EPA is satisfied that changing this rule will not relax the SIP. Then we will proceed to file a petition or regulatory change with the Environmental Improvement Board 20 days prior to a scheduled meeting at which NMED will request a hearing. This petition is comprised of a statement of reasons explaining why the rule or SIP should be adopted, amended, or repealed, as well as the public review draft of the proposed rule or SIP. The board shall determine at a public meeting occurring at least 15 days and no later than 60 days after receipt of this petition whether or not to hold a public hearing of the proposal. At the next regular schedule, EIP meeting, we will request a hearing before the EIP. If the EIP grants our request, then NMED, as agent for the board, will provide to the public notice of the proposed rulemaking at least 60 days prior to the hearing. Notice of the proposed rulemaking shall include publication in at least one newspaper of general circulation in the state, publication in the New Mexico Register, and such other means to provide notice as the board may direct or required by law. We comply with the first requirement by publishing a public notice in the form of a bilingual legal ad run in the Albuquerque Journal and the New Mexico Register. This begins the mandatory minimum 60-day public comment period. If a rule or SIP affects a particular region of New Mexico, then we will also publish a legal ad in the local newspaper that services that particular area. The second requirement is to provide to the public the notice of proposed rulemaking. Pursuant to the State Rules Act, provided the public means for an agency to distribute rulemaking information by posting it on the agency website, posting it on the Sunshine Portal, making it available in the agency's district, field, and regional offices, sending it by electronic mail to persons who have made a written request for notice from the agency of announcements addressing the subject of the rulemaking proceeding, and who have provided an electronic mail address to the agency. Sending it by electronic mail to persons who have participated in the rulemaking and who have provided an electronic mail address to the agency. Sending it by written notice that includes at a minimum an internet address and a street address where the information may be found to the persons who provide a postal address. And finally, providing to the New Mexico Legislative Council for distribution to appropriate interim and standing legislative committees. Comments received during the formal comment period will be included as exhibits in the notice of intent. In addition, pursuant to the Small Business Regulatory Relief Act, we must also notify the Small Business Regulatory Advisory Commission that the department has submitted a petition for regulatory change to the EIB, and that pursuant to Section 14-4A-4 of the Act, the department does not anticipate the proposed regulatory amendments will have any adverse effect on small businesses. Then, any person, including a petitioner, who intends to present technical testimony at the hearing, shall, no later than 20 days prior to the hearing, file a notice of intent to present technical testimony with the board administrator. This includes testimony, exhibits, a draft final order, and statement of reasons, which must be approved by the EIB. Then when we go to hearing, At the hearing, we will present our case, introduce exhibits, be subject to cross-examination, and provide rebuttal testimony. After NMED has presented his case, any other parties that have filed an NOI may also present their case. At the public rule hearing, members of the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to submit data, views, or arguments, orally or in writing. A formal filing is not required by general public comment during the hearing, but technical testimony will only be allowed if the party has filed an NOI. Once all testimony has been received and exhibits have been entered into the record, the EIB will close the hearing. The EIB may proceed directly to deliberations and a vote, or they might hold another meeting at a future date. The hearing and deliberations will be recorded by a court reporter. Assuming the EIB adopts our proposed changes to the rule or the SIP, then within 15 days after the adoption of a rule, the agency shall file the adopted rule with the state records administrator and shall provide to the public the adopted rule. No rule shall be valid and enforceable until it is filed with the Administrative Law Division and published in the New Mexico Register as provided by the State Rules Act. Therefore, when we file a rule, amendment, or repeal, we also submit it for publication in the New Mexico Register at the same time. A new or revised SIP that does not need to be filed. This is a key difference between the adoption of a rule versus the adoption of a SIP. Then we submit the proposed SIP revision to EPA for their approval, including the hearing record, which includes the file regulation, hearing transcript, exhibits, public notices, affidavits of publication, the department's notice of intent to testify, and public comments that have been received, along with the SIP transmittal letter from the governor or the secretary of NMED if designated. So why are we developing a regional Haze SIP? Sometimes the EPA will develop an entirely new program that must be adopted by states, such as the regional Haze rule under 40 CFR 51.308 and 0.309, which requires states to develop a regional Haze SIP. The EPA promulgated the regional Haze rule in 1999 and directed states to implement pollution control plans to improve visibility and air quality in national parks. These plans often require a new or revised rule to implement the specific control strategies within a SIP. For example, Part 65, entitled Smoke Management, and Part 81, entitled Western Backstop Sulfur Dioxide Trading Program, were adopted in 2003 as part of the first period regional Haze SIP. When the regional Haze SIP was amended in 2011 to address requirements of 40 CFR 51.309 for NG, Part 81 was amended. I'd like to now turn it back over to Mark to discuss milestones for public participation.
Great, thank you, Neil. So in the next section, as Neil said, I'll talk some about milestones, past, present, and future that we have for our current regional Haze state implementation plan revision that we're working on currently for the 2019 to 2028 implementation period. This is the second implementation period. Our team began initial stakeholder outreach in 2019 to 2020 with a series of 2 public webinars, at which time we also launched a new website and a listserv that the stakeholders can sign up for to receive notices of other opportunities for engagement. Between 2020 to 2022, a lot happened between those that time period. Our team continued the process to work on parts of our plan and also to do some additional engagement where we were able to do that. So we reached, as part of that, we reached out to facilities that were screened as needing a 4-factor analysis, and we posted the subsequent facility submittals and provided informal comments we received from stakeholders on our website. And we'll do a run through of our website later on in the presentation to show you guys where it's at. In 2022, we presented info and updates on regional Haze at our Four Corners Air Quality Group. And we also had, at the end of 2022, we had 2 dedicated stakeholder engagement meetings for a variety of control strategies and planning projects. The beginning of this year, we, in 2023, we're working, as Neil said, to re-engage stakeholders and work to enhance kind of some of our communications and outreach efforts with stakeholders. So we're doing this as we still have quite a bit of work to do and continuing to draft this second round state implementation plan for regional Haze. So this is the second in a series of 3 webinars that we decided to kick off this this year with, to try to kind of learn more about how we might do this and just to re-engage on some of the regional Haze process topics as well as other planning projects. So as part of this phase, we're continuing to work on the key milestones of finalizing a draft proposed plan and working on a new timeline, a revised timeline, which will provide additional milestones once we have that completed. So after we have finished the draft proposal, the regional Haze rule, Neil mentioned this in his overview of the SIP development process. But for regional Haze, within the rule, there's a special requirement that the states with Class 1 areas do a formal federal land manager consultation. And in this consultation period, the department will offer virtual or in-person meetings with FLMs to discuss our proposal. The FLMs, federal land managers, are within provide written comments on our policy analysis of the long-term strategy, which has emission reductions that are part of our plan. At that point, the department would decide on any revisions necessary based on the comments from the federal land managers, and NMED, the department would prepare written responses to comments on how the state addressed those as part of the hearing phase and in proposal revisions. So after the formal FLM consultation period, we would then enter the hearing phase. And so the hearing phase will include a request for hearing before the Environmental Improvement Board. The request will include a statement of reasons and a petition for regulatory change, along with the current draft of our proposed plan. After a hearing is set, there will be a public notice that describes the process moving forward to hearing, which will also include a formal public comment period. The Environmental Improvement Board will then meet in order to decide on the proposed New Mexico State Implementation Plan revision. So all of these phases I discussed here in the last 4 or 5 slides will be outlined in the revised schedule and timeline that we are working on internally. And we will the plan would be to post that on our website, which again will show the link to that later. And I'm going to turn it back over to Michael. He will begin the next section of our presentation.
Sure. I think we are now transitioning into the regional Haze portion of our presentation. So we're going to take a short break maybe to allow people to maybe get some water, stretch your legs. From here out, we're going to be talking regional Haze, so it gets a little bit more into the details of what we're doing, and it might be, a good point to make sure that you got some water or something, because it's going to be another 45 minutes or so presentation. Maybe not that long, but you will be getting somewhere in that vicinity. So we'll leave this slide up for now, and we'll get back started into the second part of this in just a minute. Okay.
So maybe we do about a 5-minute break, and then we'll proceed on.
Sounds good.
All right.
This is Mike Baca. Is this Rory? Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry, Matt. Is there any way you can turn your volume up a little bit, please?
On Mark or on my end?
Everybody. Seems like everybody's talking low.
Okay, so that might be on your end. So what you do on the WebEx is go up to the top menus there. It says audio and video. If you click on that, there's an option for audio settings. And under there, the first thing should be your speaker, and it will tell you which speaker you're using, and then it will say output level, and then there's a volume adjuster right there.
Right.
See if you can slide that up, and if that'll help. Does that help?
I'm a technical dinosaur here. I can't seem to find that thingamajiggy, but I mean, it's doable. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, it's in the audio and video menu up top, on the top of your screen there. Okay.
When we come back, did you want to address that question in the chat?
Yeah, that's a simple question. I guess we can answer with this looks like it's from Margaret. No, Margaret, we have not sent it to the FLMs for review yet. We are not expecting to send it to the FLMs for some time. So we're still working through the four-factor analysis and getting through that portion of it. So we do need to finish that four-factor analysis before moving forward with any sort of long-term strategy decisions or anything like that. We, as Mark alluded to, we're working on the schedule, and so we don't have a commitment to getting that drafted out at this time. But hopefully, once we start getting a better feel for completing that four-factor analysis, then we'll start being able to build a schedule and timeline out. Okay, I think that was the only question that I have seen in the chat. We're at 4:45, and so our 5-minute break has ended. So now we're going to begin talking about regional Haze, step 1 and step 2. I'll be presenting today on this topic along with Dr. Angela Rosso, who has helped out our team with some of the technical aspects of the first 2 steps. So, like I said, I just want to review some of the last webinar step 1 information and some of the additional requirements in step 1 that may not have been addressed at that time. And then we'll move on to address and discuss step 2 of EPA's guidance. So if you recall, going back to the step 1 implementation period, or step 1 for the second implementation period framework for developing your step, you can see here that we are in various stages of completing tasks. The orange highlighted tasks show those that are mostly complete and kind of gives you an idea of where we're at in that process. And the green color indicates that we are still in progress and working to complete those those steps. So related to the last question, we're right there at the 4 factors and characterizing those for mission control measures. So here we have a map image showing some of the New Mexico's Class 1 areas, and we have 9 Class 1 areas in New Mexico. We have Bandelier Wilderness Area, Bosque del Apache, Carlsbad Caverns, Gila Wilderness, Pecos Wilderness, Salt Creek, Wheeler Peak, and White Mountain Wilderness Area. So we'd like to thank Gary Jones with the U.S. Forest Service for helping our team to develop this map. And so I think he's done a great job of kind of updating the old map that we have been using since we first started developing regional Haze probably 20 years ago. So he's done a great job of updating this this map for us. So next, we have some pictures on Class 1 areas. I was reading off those Class 1 areas here, but if you can see, we have some excellent opportunities here. Starting, on the upper left-hand corner, we have San Pedro Parks, which is near Cuba, in the Jemez Mountains, Bandelier, which is near Santa Fe, Wheeler Peak up by Taos, Bosque del Apache, in between Albuquerque and Socorro. The White Mountains Wilderness Area is down by Rio Doso in the Sacramento Mountains. The Pecos Wilderness Area is also around Santa Fe, Taos area, in between the two. We have the Gila Wilderness Area, which is one of the oldest wilderness areas in the country, down by Silver City. We have the Salt Creek Wilderness Area over by Roswell, and of course Carlsbad Caverns National Park in the southeast portion of our state. So we do have some gems in our state. These are just 9 of them that have been designated by Congress as Class 1 areas and afforded special protections under the Regional Haze program. But any of us that live here in New Mexico know that those are just a sliver of awe-inspiring beauty and opportunities that are afforded to us by our recreation here in New Mexico and in our state. So I want to now switch gears a little bit into talking about step 1 and the ambient data analysis that was done for the monitoring data at our improved monitoring sites at each Class 1 area. So the regional Haze rule, requires states to report on visibility conditions during the baseline and current periods for the clearest and most impaired days. Clearest and most impaired days are the metrics by which we are measuring progress on for regional Haze. And clearest days means the 20% of monitored days in a calendar year with the lowest amounts of visibility impairment. So those are the days where you have the least amount of days. And conversely, the most impaired days are the 20% of monitored days in the calendar year that are the haziest or have the most human-made visibility impairment. And for each Class 1 area, the goal set forth by the regional Haze rule is to return those Class 1 areas back to what would be considered natural conditions by the end of 2064. And natural conditions are the visibility conditions that we would expect to see without any human-made pollution emitted into the air. I think one thing to note is that the monitoring data that we do show here is collected by federal land managers, improved monitoring data, and that some of those natural condition estimates were calculated for us by the Western Regional Air Partnership. So on this slide, we can kind of take a look and see some of the information that is presented to us by the monitoring data that is collected. So Yeah, so here we have the monitoring data for ventilator class 1 area on the 20 most impaired days. And we shall be looking at the clearest days in the subsequent slide that's presented by Angela. So we can break this chart down into different parts to try to understand what is shown here and provide some of the key takeaways and that this chart provides us. So there are links to references at the end of this segment for those that would like to learn a little bit more about visibility and the regional Haze program and the monitoring that goes into collecting the data that we use as a baseline. And as we use currently, that we use for our current conditions. So states are required to show the baseline current and natural visibility conditions, and these are represented by the 4 bar charts that you're seeing here today. The first bar shows averages from the baseline period for 2000 to 2004. The second shows the averages from 2008 to 2012, and the third shows the last 5-year period from 2014 to 2018. And the last and final bar chart that is shown is what would be expected from at natural visibility conditions. So each of the bars in this chart also have a breakdown of what type of pollutants make up the mixture of haze-causing pollution in the air. And so it speciates the improved monitors that's collecting the data speciates the pollution into different types and different, which becomes very important in trying to determine what pollutants that we need to focus on when we're developing our plan. So there are 7 different components that are collected by the improved monitors, which include sea salt, fine soil, coarse mass, organic mass from carbon, elemental carbon, ammonium nitrate, and ammonium sulfate. So we're not going to get into great detail about any of the individual species that contribute to the measurement of light scattering and impairment. It's a complex process, and they're both natural as well as industrial sources that can contribute to visibility, degradation, and interference. And we will discuss some more of this topic during, we discussed it during a little bit more during our previous webinars that we provided in 2018 and 2019. And there's also a lot of more information on visibility causing pollutants on EPA's website and at the RAC website that we'll be talking about a little bit later in our presentation. So I think one of the main takeaways here to see is taking a look at the colors there and trying to pick out which color is kind of showing the most, the biggest bar chart there. And as you can see, it looks like it's the yellow bar that is our biggest contributor, and that would indicate that would be the ammonium sulfate constituents that are causing a lot of the light scattering. And that would probably be closely followed, the other one that we are also focusing on is the nitrates. So we will be discussing this, and we a little bit more in our source selection and our control measures, and how we're kind of evaluating those based on what pollutants are causing visibility degradation at our areas. Okay. So now I think we're going to move on to looks like Mark Jones is now going to present a little bit for us and talk a little bit more about tracking visibility and the URP, or the Uniform Rate of Progress, and adjustments. So Mark.
Yeah, great job, Michael. Yeah, I'm going to queue up kind of Angela's the work that she had done on kind of showing a good example and illustration of this this additional requirement in step 1 that we didn't cover in our first webinar, is that the regional Haze rule requires, in addition to the the previous bar charts of the baseline and then the current invisibility conditions, requires the states to track visibility in the form of a uniform rate of progress glide path for each of our 9 class 1 areas within the state. And the uniform rate of progress glide path is the rate of visibility improvement in depth views that would need to be maintained during each implementation period in order to attain natural visibility conditions by the end of 2064. The rule also allows states to propose adjustments to the glide paths based on accounting for impacts from the first one is international anthropogenic or human-made sources, and also for wildland prescribed fires. And there's just a note here that the department is planning to adjust all 9 of our class 1 area glide paths using methods provided by the Western Regional Air Partnership modeling to account for both of these allowances, the international anthropogenic sources and the wildland prescribed fires. So now Angela Razzo is going to take us through an example using, and we're sticking with, even though we're showing Bandelier class 1 area for this example, we're doing this for all 9 of our class 1 areas in a consistent manner. So that said, I will turn it over to Angela.
Thanks, Mark. So on this plot, we're going to show you what this uniform rate of progress glide path looks like for a specific class 1 area. In this case, as Mark and Mike said, Bandelier National Monument. On the y-axis, we have Haze as light extinction, which is measured in deciviews. Deciviews are units of light extinction, which are logarithmically scaled to better reflect how our human eyes perceive the light. Higher values mean worse visibility of the class 1 area, and smaller values mean better visibility. On the x-axis is time starting in 2000 and extending to 2064. The red dots with the connecting line here show the annual average observations for the 20% most impaired days from 2000 to 2019. The blue markers show the annual average observation for the clearest days, and the solid blue line shows the required no degradation limit. That blue line is the visibility that the clearest days must continue to not exceed as we go forward in time. The uniform rate of progress focuses on the most impaired days, shown in red. The green line that we just added here shows the baseline period, which was also shown on the slide that Mike shared, which is the 2000 to 2004 average. The gray line shows the end point for the uniform rate of progress, which is natural conditions at the class 1 area. To calculate the uniform rate of progress, we draw a line from the baseline in 2004 to natural conditions in 2064. However, we intend to take into account the allowed adjustments to the endpoint. The first of these adjustments is for international emissions. Which is shown here with the darker gray line and the less dashed red line. The second adjustment is smaller and allows for increases in prescribed wildland fire.
It's hard to see, Angela, but I did add it.
Thank you. I didn't even see you add it. Perhaps because it's such a small adjustment, it's difficult to see. We can see that adjustment as the dark black line, which shows the new endpoint accounting for natural conditions, international emissions, and wildland prescribed fire, and the undashed red line, which shows the adjusted uniform rate of progress glide path. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Mark to talk about step 2.
Thanks, Angela, for providing that illustration. All right. So next, the next section in our webinar is going to give an example or give some of the guidance and requirements for EPA's step 2, which is to determine affected class 1 areas in other states.
I'm sorry, Mark, there's a question in the chat that I think we should go ahead and pause and address. So Alan Smith asks, is the primary international anthropogenic source in New Mexico from Ciudad Juarez? Excuse my Spanish, it's awful. Almost all of the international anthropogenic sources to New Mexico, class 1 areas, are from Mexico. I don't know that we have narrowed it down so far to be from a particular city. Okay, I think hopefully that addresses the question.
Thanks, Angela, and we can come back to that later in the presentation if it didn't fully get to the to what he was asking. So, but all right, so we'll go ahead and keep moving here. Let's see. So I think we have about 10 slides left, so we don't have too many more slides to go here. So step 2, as I mentioned, is in the EPA and RAP guidance is to determine affected class 1 areas in other states. So in the regional Haze rule, it requires that each state not only address visibility impairment within its own class 1 areas, but also to address class 1 areas outside of the state that may be affected by emissions from our state. So within the guidance, EPA provides quite a bit of flexibility to the states to use reasonable methods for quantifying or qualifying the impacts on these out-of-state class 1 areas. And this is also a appropriate, suitable subject for interstate coordination or consultations. This map shows the 9 New Mexico class 1 areas that Michael had shown previously, as well as he had shown some pictures of our amazing class 1 areas. In this map, which Carrie Jones also helped to prepare this, it shows the class 1 areas that are within 200 kilometers of New Mexico's border. What we're looking at in our initial criteria for looking at what our potential impacts might be on out-of-state class 1 areas actually looked at in the gray box here. We're looking at the potential impacts on neighboring states, so any state that we have a border with the criteria of being within 100 kilometers of our border. But then there are a few states that we do share a border or like a corner in the case of Utah with, where there's no class 1 area within 100 kilometers, but Canyonlands is just kind of outside that reach. So for those states that we don't have a class 1 area within that 100 kilometer distance, we're looking at the nearest class 1 area in those states if one exists. So in the case of Utah, we're looking at Canyonlands National Park, and Oklahoma, we're looking at Wichita Mountains, which is shown here kind of over on the right-hand side of this map. So we're going to use, similar to using Bandelier as an example for the New Mexico class 1 areas, to show some of the data products we're developing we're using and analyzing from the route. We're going to use Mesa Verde National Park as a class 1 area to look at for that we're looking at potential impacts from our state as part of step 2. And Mesa Verde, if you're not familiar with it, it's in my neck of the woods up here in the northwest part of New Mexico, not far from where I live here. It's a national park in the southwest part of Colorado. And these pictures are some landscapes that are courtesy of the National Park Service. In the bottom left, I also zoomed in on the map that that I showed in the previous slide to the Four Corners area of New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, or Utah, and then Colorado, to show the location of Mesa Verde. It's right there in the corner, small in the map, but so Mesa Verde NP for National Park. And Angela is now going to take us through an example similar to the one for the uniform rate of progress, showing us some of the RAP data that we are considering in our draft proposal for step 2.
Thanks again, Mark, as we hand it back and forth here. So to evaluate the effect of New Mexico sources on Class 1 areas outside of New Mexico, we're using resources from the Western Regional Air Partnership, or WRAP for short. To begin with, we're looking at monitoring data, which is again from the improved network of monitors for each Class 1 area. This figure shows the light extinction, this time in inverse megameters on the x-axis, caused by important species. Whoa, go back. Okay, no one's done looking at this figure yet. It's too exciting. So this figure shows light extinction on the x-axis, this time in inverse megameters for the years from 2000 to 2018. It shows different important species, color-coded, with yellow is ammonium sulfate and orange is ammonium nitrate, and those are the 2 species we're looking at most closely for this planning period of regional haze. In this example, for Mesa Verde, you can see that most of the pollution causing visibility impairment on the most impaired days is from ammonium sulfate in yellow. Okay, now we can go to the next one. Next, we look at the future year modeling to determine which source sectors and states have important contributions to each pollutant. This is shown here as source apportionment for anthropogenic ammonium sulfate. Along the x-axis is again light extinction in inverse megameters, and on the y-axis are Western states and the rest of the non-Western states grouped together as one bar. The different sectors contributing to impairment are in different colors, with orange as EGUs, or electrical generating units, red as mobile sources, yellow as non-EGUs, blue as oil and gas sources, and green as the remaining anthropogenic sources. For ammonium sulfate at Mesa Verde, we see that there is a diverse mix of states and sectors contributing to impairment. Important states are New Mexico, Utah, Arizona, and states outside of RAP. Important sectors include oil and gas and electrical generating units. We're also considering the area that air masses reaching the Class 1 area are transported from. On this map, we see the Four Corners region, which we're going to highlight there, near Mesa Verde. The colors describe the importance of different locations to the Class 1 area. Air masses that end at Mesa Verde spend more time in redder areas of the map. Air masses important to Mesa Verde spend significant amounts of time in the San Juan Basin in New Mexico, up in the northwest corner. And then on a Class 1 area to Class 1 area basis, we consider other information that might be important for us to evaluate New Mexico's influence at each Class 1 area. I think we're going to go ahead and talk about future webinars now, so I'll hand it back to Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. That was great. So that kind of concludes the coverage of step 2 for now, and step 1. And so I wanted to give a recap on what we covered in today's webinar and what we plan to cover and still to come in this 3-part series. So let's see. So in the first webinar, we focused on the ambient data analysis that was done in February 23rd. This webinar, we reviewed some of the information in step 1 and also discussed the step 2, gave an example for step 2. And then the next webinar, our plan is to focus on the step 3, which is the selection of sources for analysis. And then the remaining steps 4 through 8 are here in green, which we're still working on internally. And let's see. And so that just kind of gives a recap of what Michael initially shared at the beginning of the section on the 8 steps that we're following and developing chapters within our draft proposal directly related to these EPA steps in the guidance. On this slide, there's also a link to our events calendar, which is the best place to find information on future webinars and other events that the department holds. I apologize for the password requirement today. That I was still kind of been learning WebEx and trying to learn, the best way to set up meetings and have people register. And it looks like I might have accidentally clicked one of the buttons that required a password, which I didn't intend to do. So apologies, and we will get that fixed for our next one. We are still learning and growing as we work on these kind of engagement tools that we're using. So there's also a link to our website here, which we have posted our first webinar on the website. Let's see, and I think I have, okay, so I'll show a screenshot of our website in a little bit here. So let's just hold off on that for now. And I'll go ahead and move on to, I have a couple more slides here before we get to the questions, the question and answer session. And then we have some other projects Michael's going to talk about with the planning section. So Michael introduced the planning team, which most of the people on, or a lot of the people on the planning section, in the planning section, are working on regional Haze in one form or another. Kirby Olson it's been great to have a planning section chief. We did not have one for a year or so, and she's been providing some great leadership and direction. Michael Baca is the project manager, and all of our contact information is listed here, our emails and our phone numbers. So you may contact any of us. I'm sort of the main point person for regional Haze. So I just ask that, if you do email, please include me. But you can also reach out to Michael or Kirby or others here. So Sufi, Angela, and Rosalind from our emission inventory and modeling section, which is in the planning section as well as control strategies, are providing some very much needed technical support, sort of on a as needed and as requested basis. And I also have Ken Miller here listed, who is our liaison with the City of Albuquerque Environmental Health Department. So he's helping us to coordinate our efforts with the City of Albuquerque, since for regional Haze, when we submit our SIPs to our plans to EPA, we'll have separate elements, but it's important that we coordinate those two elements when we submit it to EPA. So we're working pretty closely with City of Albuquerque. And then I have the website here again, and I have, let's see. So here's a screenshot. We've made a few changes to our website. So we added our web author added this section on outreach, education, and engagement, where we have some links to some information. This is also where we will post our updated timeline when it's ready. Right now, the timeline is the previous version. But at this level or the high level timeline, the phases will probably not be all that different. But the times when they would actually take place or be completed would be different. So, and then this is also where we will be posting our webinars. So we'll have the recordings as well as the slide decks for the webinars. And then we also have some comments that we've received, over the last 3 years from some of the stakeholders. There's a folder here that you can access those comments. Other things that you can find on our website are the 4-factor analyses that have been submitted by all of the NMED 23 facilities, and then City of Albuquerque had one additional facility that was screened in. So we worked with the City of Albuquerque on that process, and we also have both the NMED and the City of Albuquerque contact information here on the website. So, and there's also a place to sign up for the listserv on the website, and a link to all 9 of our class 1 areas. So we have links to the respective federal land manager pages that have more information about visiting those sites and about other things regarding their management of those class 1 areas. So this concludes the regional Haze portion of the webinar, and I'm going to turn it over to back to Michael Bach again to help facilitate some question and answer session. And then I think don't want you to take off just yet. We're going to practice. I think maybe show you guys the RAP Regional Haze storyboard here after we do a little bit of the question and answer. But I'll turn it over to Michael and just kind of let him facilitate this next session, and I'll be available to help with questions that are directed that I could possibly help with. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark. That's some great information that we received from you, Angela. And so now I think we want to take questions and comments or ideas for the Regional Haze program specifically, but we'd also like to take questions or comments, ideas on our public participation process. And then, if we have time and if you have interest, we can also talk about any other projects or questions or concerns that people may have regarding air quality. I think we did have, some questions that were submitted beforehand, and if people are online, they're more welcome.
Sorry, Mike, we lost your sound there.
So,
Sure. Mike,
to answer,
sounds like it's starting to come back slowly.
questions, comments, ideas. Hello.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I mean, here's you now.
Sorry, I switched over to my computer, and we're using a system here at our new office in Albuquerque, and we're trying to get used to the system, and it looks like we might be running into some bandwidth issues on Neil's computer. So I was just saying that now's the time we want to take questions and answer, or questions, comments, and any ideas. I think we have a couple in the chat box that I'll refer to, but I was kind of saying that people have submitted a couple questions beforehand. Please feel free to bring those questions up now or type them into the chat box. And we are talking. We want to talk about regional Haze specific questions right now, but we also want to entertain questions for the public participation process or any other program, policy project that the Air Quality Bureau that is going on with us that we might be able to provide some additional information on. And Mark did say, part of the objective of doing the stakeholder engagement event was to provide stakeholders added capacity to engage with the resources that are available to them. Okay, looks like we're switching back to the other system. Sorry for that. So just to try to get our stakeholders familiar with some of those resources that are available to them on the internet and on our websites, CPA's websites, and there's just a wealth of information that people can look into for themselves. So I think I'll move to the first question that we have. And it says, is there any specific place for oil and gas operators to refer to ensure they are operating compliant and nothing else is needed besides the 4-factor Haze analysis that was submitted to NMED? Do you want to take that one, Mark, or do you want me to address that?
Probably you.
Okay. Yeah. So regarding the regional Haze role, if you're subject to that role, your facility and your company should have been notified, and you would have submitted information to us for the 4-factor analysis. If your company has not received that request from us, a number of years ago, or you're not aware of that, then there's no additional requirements that you need to do for the regional Haze role in order to be compliant. So the only facilities that need to think about regional Haze were those that were selected and contacted by us. And if you are one of those selected facilities, there's nothing at this time that you need to do in order to comply with the regional Haze role. We are right now completing our 4-factor analyses, and we're starting to reach back out to our facilities and starting to re-engage with them and make sure that we have the most up-to-date contact information. And we're still trying to assess some of the operating scenarios that might be going on. So some facilities may have changed what they're doing, and things like that. For instance, one of the facilities that we selected in was the Vietnam San Juan generating station. And so since we've selected them, we got a 4-factor analysis for them, other things have happened, and that facility is now shut down and is scheduled for demolition. So, so basically, in a nutshell, there's nothing else you have to do for regional Haze right now until we'll start engaging the 4-factor facility analysis facilities in the upcoming months. I hope that answered your question, Guillermo. That was a little long-winded and a little hard. So maybe if I didn't, we can ask a clarifying question. We have another one. With the adjustments to the glide path, will you meet the 2064 natural conditions goal sooner than 2064? That one.
You want me to go ahead and jump in here?
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate. So maybe Mark, can you go back to the glide path check?
So the glide path itself really doesn't predict how well how well we're doing at reaching natural conditions by 2064. It's really just because modeling the future is always a bit like looking into a crystal ball. It relies on predictions of what we're going to do, which don't always come true. We don't model all the way out to 2064. That's too far in the future for us to be able to predict with any sort of reliability. So what the glide path does is it allows us to look at more recent or closer to us years. It's not quite as far out as 2064 to check if we're heading in the right direction and if we're making that, as the state, as what it says, uniform rate of progress. So adjusting the glide path doesn't really mean anything for when we'll actually reach the natural conditions. Does that help, Carrie? Maybe you can pop something in the chat if I'm going totally the wrong direction with your question here. Okay, great. That helps.
You can see where the conditions that you have to do
Some sound problem.
Mike, you're still cutting out, or you guys are it's kind of garbled.
You hear me better there?
Yes, except it's echoing, so you'll have to turn the other one off.
Just a second to adjust some settings here.
Okay, that sounds much better.
Okay, thank you. And so I was just saying that the adjustment of the glide path just changes where the endpoint for the natural conditions are. It doesn't mean that we meet it any earlier, but we're adjusting, when we adjust the glide path, we adjust the endpoint for natural conditions. So I was just adding that to Angela's answer. Okay. We have another question from John. What type of oil and gas facilities have been identified, contacted, and why? What types of regulations on upstream or midstream oil and gas facilities might be expected, if any, under a new SIP or rulemaking?
So Michael, you could probably, the oil and gas, so the oil and gas facilities that have been screened for regional haze. We are going to also cover this in the next webinar. So step 3 is the source selection. So of those, the 23 NMED facilities that were selected are all Title V permitted facilities, and they're a mix of midstream compressor stations and midstream gas plants. And then in addition to the bulk of our facilities being oil and gas facilities, we also had screened in 2 EGUs that were still in operation back when we originally did the source selection. And there's one additional facility that is it's an electric generating unit that's driven by a gas turbine down in or gas turbines and boilers down in the southwestern part southern part of the state. So far as the other associated kind of um, regulations and whatnot for oil and gas. Maybe I could let Michael or Kirby
Yeah,
that if
with the regional haze rule, we're looking at specific facilities to install emissions reduction control technology on, and so it wouldn't be applied to the oil and gas sector. It would be we're looking at facilities individually and trying to determine what would be technically feasible, and we'll go through the four factors that we use to kind of determine what would be a reasonable control to consider. And it's all based on what is at the facility, what existing controls they have, and other things that we kind of take into consideration. But it's facility by facility kind of determinations. I think that covers the question.
Yeah, if we go backwards, I think we missed a question here, which, Guillermo, you have your hand up. Was it because you wanted us to address the question you put in the chat, or did you have another question?
No, that's correct. I just wanted to flag that question.
And I think we can address this if you want to go back, Mark, to the analysis for Class 1 areas outside of New Mexico. This is for Mesa Verde National Park, but it's fairly similar to what we see at a lot of the New Mexico Class 1 areas. Here we go. We're making progress back towards it. Where, of course, what sources of air pollution affect each Class 1 area are going to vary for the Class 1 areas. And Mark, if you want to go all the way to the source apportionment plot. Oh, there we go. So this source apportionment plot, like I said, this is for Mesa Verde, which is in Colorado, but it's similar to a lot of the ones in New Mexico. So you can see the light extinction, which is the haziness or the impact. And then this is broken down by industry segment, essentially. So you see the orange is electrical generating units. So that's power plants. And then you have mobile sources, cars mostly. Non-EGU, which is kind of a bucket category. And then the blue is oil and gas. And then the remaining anthropogenic sources, which is another bucket category. And I think we'll probably, in another webinar, cover more of these plots for the Class 1 areas inside of New Mexico.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay.
And I think we have a related question about contributing emissions from Mexico.
Right. So, thank you, Kirby. So for sources from Mexico, we did not do the source apportionment, so there's no plots like this one that show Mexico as one of these bars. What we do have is we have plots similar to the next one, which is the area of influence for each of the Class 1 areas. You want to go to that? So this shows the area of influence. So it's essentially just the amount of time air masses that reach the Class 1 area spend in any particular area. And we have these for each of the Class 1 areas in New Mexico as well. And what we also have is what's called extinction-weighted residence time. So it's a similar plot to this, except it's essentially multiplied by the days that have the highest, or the haziest days, the 20% most impaired days. And then it's multiplied by the concentration for each of the species. So we would have it for ammonium sulfate and ammonium nitrate, where we can see it essentially tells you what areas are most important to the hazy days that are caused by that pollutant. So we won't have specific industry level breakdowns for Mexico, but we can see when Mexico is influencing each Class 1 area. And I guess now that I've talked about it on this webinar, we're going to cover those on another webinar too.
That's okay. I appreciate the questions and the discussion. This is good.
I suppose I should say now that people have shown interest, we're going to cover it on another webinar.
Are there other questions or see, make sure I get back to the right slides here.
I'm not seeing anything coming in. I think we'll give people a few more moments to maybe finish typing if they are. Looks like Guillermo has his hand up, so we can go to him.
Hello, everyone. I just want to introduce myself first, too. I know I've asked a question before, but I'm Guillermo Ortiz. I'm a clean vehicle advocate with the Natural Resources Defense Council. And so in particular, we're looking and working in New Mexico, focused on transportation-related emissions. And so I'm seeing that I saw from the answer that the majority of the contribution to regional haze seems to be oil and natural gas facilities. But what kind of analysis or what kind of work have you considered on the mobile emissions sector and how that's contributing to regional haze? I know you mentioned that the Class 1 areas might be impacted by different factors depending on where they are. I just wanted to see, in particular, concerned about diesel pollution from medium and heavy-duty vehicles and see if that's contributing to issues in the state. But thank you so much for answering the question.
Great, thanks, Guillermo. Yeah, I think Angela touched on that a little bit when she was talking about the major source sectors that impact. Mobile sources were included in there, and it looked like it was a fairly small sliver of the impact on, anyway, Mesa Verde, which Angela was saying is quite reflective of our Class 1 areas as well. It's a similar mix of what we see.
That's helpful, thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, to recap, we, like Mark said, we are focusing on this for the second period. We are looking at Title V sources, so major sources, and most of them are within the oil and gas industry or the electric generating units. Albuquerque does have a cement kiln. That is the facility that they have. But for New Mexico, most of our sources are either oil and gas or EGUs. And we'll get into a little bit more about source selection and how we determine which facilities have to do a four-factor analysis in our webinar in about a month.
And I'm just going to add real quick, that source apportionment plot we were looking at was for ammonium sulfate. I would expect to see higher impacts from mobile sources in the ammonium nitrate source apportionment than the ammonium sulfate source apportionment.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Angela. So, Guillermo, we could follow up on your question and get you a little bit more information on maybe on the NOx side.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, John has another question. Or Mark, can you go to the contact slide, please? And we have actually, before John's question, we had how much does agriculture play a role? I don't know.
That's a good question. I'm not sure we've done a huge amount of examining that. That's kind of in the part of the modeling that we don't have a huge amount of expertise in. At NMED, RAP does include disturbance to land is included in the modeling. For instance, for included in windblown dust, how disturbed land is. But I'm not sure how that's included. Or the details of how it's included, I guess I should say.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a clear way of apportioning it to our agriculture. And I think a lot of the kind of the information in my field on is more like speculative and kind of based on some of the exceptional events work that we've done, the windblown dust stuff that we've done, and how much agriculture may or may not contribute to some of the PM exceedances that we have down south. In general, agriculture, they try to minimize the amount of topsoil that is being blown off of their fields, and so active agricultural operations generally try to do a good job of trying to keep the soil on. I think where we've seen major impacts, maybe not to regional haze, but impacts to communities and areas is where we've had fallow land or agricultural land that they are no longer using. That tends to become some of the bigger issues that we have with emission sources are those that have been abandoned, and not necessarily the active ones. The just generating activities from agriculture are generally short term, and they're done during the tilling and harvesting periods of the year. Okay, and have expected impacts of the new ozone precursor rule been considered in context of regional haze? So that's a great question, John. And I think that's kind of where we're at this moment. And so we are going through the 4-factor analysis and determining, what controls are technically feasible and cost effective and would be reasonable. And so we are considering whether some of those controls might be more stringent than the ozone precursor rule or less stringent, or trying to take that into account. So that is in our mind, and we do plan on talking with our 4-factor analysis facilities to try to discuss with them what are some of their plans for complying with the ozone precursor rule, and how we're to discuss with them their compliance plans. So I think that's part of the reason for us to be contacting these facilities. Like we said, we're re-engaging the facilities, and part of that is because once in the next upcoming months, we're going to be getting consultations with them and kind of letting them know where we're at with our 4-factor analysis and getting closer to finalizing those and bringing those to policy decisions for our secretary to make. Great. Well, we have about 15 minutes left in our time. So, Mark, do you want to move on to the next segment maybe and start exploring some of the resources? I think at this time we want to visit the RAP storyboard website and give everyone a little bit of a better feel for what we're talking about when we're talking about regional haze and visibility degradation, and how that might affect one's enjoyment of our class 1 areas. So, and hopefully, part of our, like I was saying, part of our objective here today is to build capacity for our stakeholders. So we do want to, click on these links and get you to see how cool some of these really are. The storyboard is a really good place for any stakeholder to go to in order to just get a real layman's terms what regional haze is all about and why it's important to the West especially. So the storyboard has a real Western perspective on regional haze that I find helpful for us and for our stakeholders. Okay, we are seeing your web browser now, Mark. Oh.
All right, give me 1 second here. I just need to now share this. Okay, so you should see, should be able to see it now.
Yeah, we do, Mark. Thanks. So as you see here, this, like I was saying, the storyboard has a wealth of information. It's very pretty. It's a very pretty website, and it's very easy to navigate and very easy to read and understand. So I think the RAP did a great job in consultation with some of the Western states to develop this, and it's a really great resource for everyone to kind of go and visit. I think kind of outside of today's stakeholder engagement event and get a little bit more background and information to regional Haze. One of the tabs that we do want to bring your attention to is the understanding visibility tab, and here this provides us a visual comparison of what we're talking about, for most impaired days or clearest days. So some of these pictures that we'll be showing, or some of the information that's on here, kind of describes some of the underlying science of that, but it also provides some pictures to provide a visual reference for what we're talking about. So yeah, here we have a picture of Canyonlands National Park in Utah. This is one that we're evaluating for our impact on, and for this, it says the visual range is 435 kilometers. So that is a really clear day. RAP used a modeling tool to simulate what a hazy day would look like. And so when Mark scrolls down here, we'll kind of see what 430 kilometers looks like versus 30 kilometers, I believe it is. Yeah, 31.3 kilometers due to haze. And so you kind of get a better feel for, when you go to a class 1 area, you would really expect to see that pristine vista that you might see there. And it kind of be a bummer to travel all the way to one of these places and you get there and it looks like this. So we just thought that maybe this would be, some good visual reference to why regional haze rule was adopted by Congress and why New Mexico Environment Department now is undergoing the process of revising our setup. You want to illustrate some other class 1 areas, Mark? So Yosemite, on a clear day, nearly 400 kilometers, and then again on a hazy day. So I think a lot of us are familiar with haze, during the smoke season. So we've been impacted the last couple of years by wildfire smoke, and we get a feel for it, but you may not have experienced it at a class 1 area. So this is what we're talking about. The Grand Canyon, here's a really clear day versus what a hazy day might be expected. Okay. So that's a really good resource I encourage everyone to go to. We do have some slides at the end of the presentation that have additional links and resources that I encourage everyone to go to, click on, and contact us if you need any help navigating or finding any information that you're looking for. I think if we don't have the expertise or we don't know the question, we will direct you to the person that can talk you through these websites and make sure that you get the information that you're looking for. So here, we have additional opportunities. Do you want to describe this slide, Neil? Maybe I think Neil has some info about.
You hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, so as Mike was saying, there are a number of ways for you to learn more about regional Haze and help become engaged with the regional Haze that we're working on. First one is our website, which we cover a little bit, and I encourage you to explore it. Graph storyboard is excellent, and it took a lot of work to do, so I encourage you to look at that more. Just give a quick overview of it. Then the listserv sign up is right there if you want to be notified when we're having drafts released or open houses or workshops or anything like that. If you sign up for this, everything we're doing with regional Haze, you'll receive a notification if we send one out. Webinars we've already covered. We've given 2 so far, and we'll give another one in the near future, and then many more after that. Comments or questions, you can either send to the regional Haze email address shown there, or you can communicate directly with Mark. And then we have what's called a Smart Comment Portal, hosted by NMED. And I don't believe it's been open yet. I'm not sure. I don't think it's open yet. But once it is open, you'll go into that website and submit comments. And to understand better how you do go to that website, how you navigate that website. There's 2 tutorials on YouTube. One's in English and one's in Spanish. And then I'll walk you through step by step.
I think we do also have things to know. And I think we do also have.
Yeah.
Okay. So we do also have an additional slide that has some NMED and EPA websites.
You're cutting out again.
Let's go to the next slide, Mark.
Oh, yeah.
There we go. And so just some quick indicators I think that we have here, our homepage, the HTTP's main page. What's that? You have a hard time hearing me?
Yeah, it's not as bad, but it's a little
Issues here. Muffled.
a little bit muffled, yeah, but it's better now.
It's like, over here. Does it sound when I move?
Try again. Testing.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can. That's better. Sounds like it helps some.
Okay. Sorry for that. We're having some technical issues here with our owl. We're trying to figure out all the different technology that we have and set up with this. So thanks for bearing with us. Also, these are just quick hitters. These are websites and links that I think that you can go to for that we think are real high level things that you might visit often. We have both NMED and EPA links there. So please feel free again. This is like homework for stakeholders. These are links that you can go to in between these stakeholder engagement events and possibly learn a little bit more about the air quality and help you develop some of the questions that you may want to start asking us, especially as we get more into the Regional Haze project and as we get closer to doing any rulemakings or any other projects that we do. I do encourage people to kind of beef up on their air quality knowledge, and in that way they can participate in a process even that much more. So I think we do have a final slide. We have about 5 minutes left, so I think it's time to start wrapping it up and kind of talk next steps and additional ways to contact us. So we are going to have an additional stakeholder engagement event for Regional Haze next month on April 27th. So please mark the date or save the date on the calendar. We are also planning a Southern New Mexico Dust Symposium on May 9th. And a little bit further out into the future, we are doing some planning for the Four Corners Air Quality Group meeting, which is going to be held in November 7th through 9th. And I believe we are in Colorado this year. We'll be up there for that event. We have our link for our events calendar, so that's a handy link. That's another quick hitter. I think that everyone should have maybe saved on their browser as a bookmark. That is becoming the way that NMED is posting all of our events and providing access to a lot of our virtual meetings. The EIB meetings are on there. I think our Water Quality Control Commission meetings are on there. If you want to comment on permits or other things that NMED is going on, that's a place to see where what's open and what's happening at NMED. I think we went over the regional Haze feedback. We have a dedicated email. You can contact Mark. You can contact me. We have our website and the control strategies group. There again, we have our contact information. So I want to thank everyone today for coming and for participating. We had some great questions. I'm so glad that we had these. And I encourage you to keep developing these questions. Don't just stop. It's hard to answer some of these questions when we're not ready for them, but I do appreciate it because it helps us think about some of the things that maybe we're missing. So that's some of the things that we want to look at, some of the things that we might not be thinking about, or maybe challenging some of the thoughts that we've already thought about, but maybe we need to revisit and that sort of thing. So I do appreciate everyone providing their input and asking their questions at all levels. So thank you for that. And hopefully we will see you again next month. Have a good evening, everyone.
Michael, can I ask you a question?
Sure. We'll stick on for a little while.
Will you be emailing the presentation with the live links so we can get to them?
Yeah, I think, Roy, I don't know if we'll email it, but we will be posting it on our website. And then we might send an email letting everyone know that it has been posted. So you might not receive it directly through an email, but we will post it on our website. That way you can get it. And bear with us. We do have a process of posting stuff to the website, and it sometimes does take some time. So it may be a week to 10 days to get it up. We're going to shoot for trying to get it up as soon as possible, but it might take some time.
Great. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your help.
No problem.
Yeah, if you email me as well, Rory, I could probably maybe expedite that once we have. I think this is our, we finalized it, so I could probably send it to you in a PDF version, and it should have the live links. If you send me an email, it shouldn't be too big of a file. So I'd be happy to help with getting you that.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I will do that.
Okay. All right at 6 o'clock. Thanks, Michael. So yeah, we'll talk soon, and thanks again, everyone, for attending today. I'm gonna go ahead and close the meeting now.
Thanks for the presentation.
Thanks.